Got Steve Days on the Line from Michigan Podcast. Also, his channel, The Bigger 10. Check them both out. Again, it's Michigan Podcast and it's The Bigger 10. I'm going to get the link to a recent show in which you can check out his total team talent ratings. The Rod Favre back on the Michigan beat. And I guess, Steve, if there's one thing that we can credit Jim Harbaugh for over the last year and a half is that he pulled together a nice recruiting class here, even with all the uncertainty and all the groundwork that needs to be laid during the time in which there was speculation about his job status. He pulls in a top 10 class. So the Rod Favre is asking, do you think hiring a younger and more diverse coaching staff will help in recruiting? How much does the lack of experience hurt recruiting?
I think, you mentioned this class. I mean, top 10 classes, this is, I think, their fourth or fifth since Harbaugh's been there. So they're one of the 14 teams. Athlon Sports has the stat that 26 of the 28 teams to make the college football playoff so far were teams that the 4 years leading up to the season averaged a top 15 recruiting class. That's 14 teams heading into this year. Michigan is the 12th of those 14 teams. So I don't know that recruiting was a huge problem. This class I like actually more than any of his previous ones. And the reason why is this is the first time, Mark, since Michigan's last #1 overall class, 1998, coming off the national championship year, that they recruited both a 5-star quarterback and running back in the same class. That was Justin Fargas and Drew Henson. And this year they did it with J.J. McCarthy and Donovan Edwards. I also think there's some playmakers at other places. I think Xavier Worthy is the fastest receiver recruit Michigan has signed since at least Steve Breston, and maybe going back even further. So I like the top end playmaking ability of this class is probably the best of any class overall that Harbaugh has brought in. Now, regarding the question about the younger staff, I think that they've got to win enough games this fall for that to matter. They're off to a good start for the 2022 class. I don't know how many slots they have left because this is a young team where a lot of these guys are going to be back next year. But ultimately, for that future investment from that younger staff in recruiting, for that to pay off, they've got to win enough games this year to survive the season, to be the coaches next year. And I think that's the issue more than anything else. I don't think recruiting has been Michigan's problem. No, they're not recruiting at Ohio State's level. Frankly, Michigan on a regular routine basis, even when it's been at its top, at the top, never has. That the problem isn't beating Ohio State. That's the ultimate disappointment. But the problem is they only went 3-3 against the Michigan State program, scuffling bad down the stretch of the D'Antonio era. They just lost to Mel Tucker. He's got a losing record to James Franklin. He's been absolutely housed 3 out of the last 4 years by Wisconsin. And the last 2 years were, frankly, nationally televised embarrassments to the program. That's the issue, Mark. And we're not even to the argument at Michigan yet about why can't you beat Ohio State. We're not even the next team after Ohio State yet. We're not even that team yet. We got to separate from all those other teams before we can even have that argument. In 7 years, he's not even been able to do that.
You basically hit on this next question that Vinay is asking about the gap between Ohio State and Michigan being talent, coaching, or culture, and the combination of such.
I think I would, if I had to guess, if you took those 3 things, I would say it's 20% talent, meaning that Ohio State has another layer of playmaker that Michigan has not had. But then I go to 20% coaching, because if Donovan Peoples-Jones, Michigan and Ohio State were his final 2 schools, if that young man signs with Ohio State, does he get, 60 catches in a career? Mark, does he do that at Ohio State for his entire 3 years there? Hell no, he doesn't do that. So I think it's 20% coaching. I think it's 20% recruiting. And I think it's 60% the culture at Michigan. Jim Harbaugh has just never established a college culture. They do a great job of acquiring talent and sending it off to the NFL, but they just don't win for Michigan anymore. They're just that esprit de corps, that culture. See, to me, that was Urban Meyer's missing. That was the part that's been underrated about what he did at Ohio State. Is we saw at Florida, his 2010 class at Florida was the highest rated recruiting class in the history of recruiting services until this Alabama class. But he couldn't compile those guys into a cohesive culture, and then ultimately had so many problems off the field, and he had health problems and resigned. What he did at Ohio State is he learned from that mistake and realized that I cannot be an NFL farm team and a national champion, that I've got to build a college program here. And I think that's the issue. How many Michigan players, when they get married, are going to ask Jim Harbaugh to be one of their groomsmen? But how many guys are going to ask Urban Meyer to be one of theirs? How many of your guys are going to ask Jim Tressel to be theirs? I think that's the issue here, that we don't have a culture. We just have a brand. It's just Jim Harbaugh. And I think that's what's got to be corrected. And the fact we're having this conversation in year 7 is a damn tragedy.